This method might not be the best for making large trees, but for making smaller to medium-sized trees like this, I think it's one of the best methods to make realistic trees. So let's get started. First you'll need some thin wire. You can buy it, but you can also salvage it from old electronics like this old doorbell coil I have here. Another great source is electrical wire, such as this thick car battery cables. This is actually my favorite method because you don't need to cut the individual wires, they are already bundled together, which saves time and effort. I'm going to make 2 trees from this bundle, which is about 25 strands. I start by twisting the wire in the middle to form the trunks of both trees. Twisting 2 trees at once is just a bit more efficient and easier. Next, I separate the wires into smaller bundles and twist them again to form the branches. With this method, it's hard to end up with something that looks bad, but don't expect your first few trees to be perfect. Making model trees teaches you to really observe how real trees grow. We see trees every day, but we don't actually look at them. Our brains are just like, tree detected, moving on. Then you sit down to make one and suddenly you're like, wait. What color is a tree trunk? Brownish, grayish? Let's go see outside. Until you try to build something, you don't realize how much you've been ignoring. This hobby kind of rewires your brain. That's the cool thing about this hobby. It makes you see everyday things in a totally different way. For different types of trees, you might want to use different thicknesses of wire. You'll just have to do some experimentation and see what works for you. If your tree feels too flimsy and you're using bare copper wire that's not insulated, you can strengthen it by thinning the wires together with a soldering iron. However, this is a lot more work. Copper wires used for coils are always insulated, but copper wires in cables are not. This whole twisting process may seem like a lot of work, but when you're not making large trees, it's not that time consuming. I was able to twist these 8 trees in less than 30 minutes. But now we have a problem. How do we hide the wire? I don't mean to hide it like that. I mean, how do we stop it from looking like twisted wire? Just quickly, this is optional, but I like using spray paint to give them a quick base coat just to prime the surface. But this cheap spray paint didn't work that well. Previously I used Tamiya surface primer, but that's a bit expensive. So feel free to just skip the spray paint step. Anyway, over the years I've tried many different techniques to hide the twisted wire. I've tried hot glue, I've tried thinning the wire with a soldering iron, mixing different pastes with different glues and applying it with a paintbrush, and there are many other techniques, but I have found a method that works great for me, and it's not only easy and quite fast, but also cheap. So I use normal PVA wood glue and I add a bit of grey paint. Then I simply paint it all over the tree. I try to avoid adding too much paint because clumps of glue on it won't look good. Then I dip the tree in this bucket of dirt. For this you can use anything like tile grout, plaster of Paris, or the plaster that's used to fill holes in the wall. If you can still see the twisted wire after doing this, simply apply a bit more glue and repeat the process. After drying, because of the glue, it will remain semi-flexible, so if you want to bend the branches after making the tree, you can totally do that. I found this to be quite durable. Doing this for all 8 trees took me about 20 minutes. And this is how they look at this stage. Getting the correct brown or grey color for the trunk is harder than it might seem. If you're just making a generic tree, just paint it brown. But if you want to create a specific type of tree, as always, make sure to look at references. Or if you're a tree expert, you can use your imagination, I guess. I'm not a tree expert at all, so don't ask me what type of tree this is. It's just a generic tree of some kind. I guess if I learn more about trees, I would be able to create a better result. But for this video, I just want to share the things I've learned about making trees, so you can make your own trees. Because these techniques can be used to make very nice looking trees if you just play around with the colors and the shapes of the branches. Anyway, something I've always struggled with is adding foliage that looks realistic and isn't very expensive, that doesn't take ages to apply. I'm still struggling to find a good method for adding foliage on large trees, but let me show you how I do it for these small ones. First, you'll need static grass. I recommend using tall static grass like 8 to 12 mm. I'm using Nog wild grass light green. To make it easier to access, I like to pour all the materials I need into bowls. Empty ones. Yes, I was eating breakfast while filming this video. I used wood glue again, applying it on the tips of the branches with a paintbrush. Then I sprinkle on the static grass from all angles to get good coverage. After that, I give the tree a spin to shake off the excess. And then repeating the process for all the other trees. This took me 12 minutes. But one layer of static grass doesn't give it enough volume, so I paint on more wood glue and sprinkle on some more static grass. However, it's important that the first layer is completely dry before moving on to the next step. And for this layer I also sprinkle on some drier static grass, because not all leaves on a tree are perfectly green. But again, use reference photos. By the way, if you are new to the channel, my videos are all about DIY solutions for expensive model railroading stuff, tutorials and how-to videos about scenery, and occasionally 3D printing stuff for the layout. So make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss future videos. So we have built up the volume for the foliage now, but it doesn't look like tree leaves. So for the leaves I'm using scatter material dark green. It's I guess a Hornby product. To apply it, guess what glue I'm using? That's right, wood glue. Then I simply sprinkle it on. I used some of my homemade leaf materials just to add a bit more yellow, to simulate the half-dead leaves, and I just repeat the process for the rest of them. And that's basically it. But don't leave yet, I will tear one apart and do a durability test. Overall, I'm really impressed with how strong and durable these trees are. I mean, they are not indestructible, but compared to other trees I've bought, they are actually very solid. They do have one weakness though, and that's water. The wood glue I used softens again when it gets wet, but honestly I prefer using this kind of glue because I sometimes forget to wash my brushes after applying it. And with this glue I can just leave them in water for a few hours and they clean up like nothing ever happened. And I'm not planning to take my layout with me to go swimming, so no problem there. But that's gonna be it for this video. Please let me know in the comments what video you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.